Today, you're going to get to hear from Preston Smiles, a world guru in abundance and conscious living. He's got over 400,000, close to 500,000 people following him and engaging with his amazing work, his books, his podcast. And as part of Mindset and Meaning Week, I know you're going to love this episode. The Lead on Purpose podcast is sponsored by NZ Mortgages. Learn more at nzmortgages.co.nz. Preston Smiles, a huge welcome to the Lead on Purpose podcast.
Blessings and blessings, James. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that we get a chance to sit down because I've watched you over the last number of years. I've been really enjoying where you've taken your brand, your message, how you've helped serve, you've transformed people's lives. You've got hundreds of thousands of humans around the world who are inspired by you, who choose to subscribe and follow to your way of thinking and being. And I feel like this is the time right now where we need to talk about how we create abundance, how we welcome it, how we nurture it, whatever it is to make our lives more abundant. I believe you're the guy on the planet that we need to talk to. So thank you for creating this space. And we're going to talk about your book. I mean, I just think it's a transformational work. But before we get there, let's talk about Preston, where he started. And, was he born into mega wealth and therefore it's just kept generating itself? Or were there some challenges there? And, what did you navigate that's helped shape how you see the world today?
Yeah, man. First of all, thank you for that beautiful, gracious intro. Abundance to me is one of the most important topics, period. Because I believe that we live on a planet that is governed by laws. Right? There are certain laws that none of us have an issue with, like gravity or buoyancy, but there are other laws that are at play, and how those laws get enacted is by way of our abundance consciousness. And it's super important that we focus on and remember, right, who and what we really are. And so to give you a little bit of background and backdrop on me, very early on, I was placed in special education, special needs, and my parents would fight about what was wrong with me. And what they didn't know was that I was dyslexic and I just didn't have a standardized brain. Therefore, I did bad on standardized test. I was in classes with Down syndrome children and Asperger's children, and my 7-year-old and 8-year-old brain could not distinguish between this system and these adults making a mistake and the egocentric way in which I saw myself. And so I gained an identity of being the dumb one, the stupid one in the family, the burden to my family. And so out of that identity, I became an out of the way kid where I adapted in such a way where I made myself have no needs. I was this perfect little nice Christian boy who had no needs, and I was rewarded for not having any needs. But the truth was that I had a lot of needs. I just buried them, suppressed them, and hid them away from the people who I loved the most because I didn't want to add to their stress. Children in general adapt based on who their parents are. If you have sad parents, you might become a cheerer-upper comedian type kid. If you have stressed out parents, you may become a out of the way kid. If you have very angry parents, you might become a shy kid. And these are all safety strategies and mechanisms that we use to stay safe. And the problem is that most adults never come out of that. And so they spend the rest of their lives in a safety strategy and pattern that was formed in childhood. And then they believe that's who they are. And so in my work, I remind people that that's not who you are, it's who you became. And now what's possible, right? As we begin to sort of cut the second umbilical cord, because the first one gives us life, the second one holds us back from life. And so now going back to my story, out of that identity, I joined a gang by the time I was 11 years old in Los Angeles and started smoking weed. And I had a moment where my dad caught me smoking, and he sat me down and he said, I want you to take 24 hours to think about everybody you know who smokes weed and does drugs. And if you want their life, then you can keep going. But if you don't want their life, then I want to challenge you to make a different decision. And he left me in it at 11. Well, 24 hours goes by, come back, we have a conversation. And I say, yeah, I'd rather be like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, who were my heroes at the time. And they don't smoke weed, so I think I'm not going to smoke. And my dad says, that's a great choice. And let me tell you something about you. You're a leader. And if everybody else is going left, but something in you says you're going right and you need to go right, you'll do it anyway. That's how much of a leader you are. Now I'm 11. He tells me this at 11. Fast forward to 15 years old. My best friend Scott calls me to go out and drink and do these things called runouts, where we go into a liquor store and pretend like we're 21, even though we're 15 and 16 and 17. And we grab the liquor and we run out before paying for it. And I'd done 30 of these at this point. And Scott called me and he said, yo, we're going out tonight and we're going to do the damn thing. And something internally said, no, don't go. My body literally said, don't go. Then my dad's voice popped in my head. You're a leader. Everybody else is going this way, but you feel like it's not, go the opposite way. So we're going back and forth. And I said, man, I'm not going. We hang up the phone. Within 1 hour of us hanging up that phone, every single person in that blue Astro van that I was in the night before that, and the night before that, and the night before that, every single one of them was shot. And my best friend, Scott, was shot in the head and died. And wow. This was a really, really big moment for me on multiple levels. One, survivor's guilt. Two, I couldn't even spell intuition, but it hit me, right? Like I'm 15. I didn't even understand what that was. And this is, a long time ago. I'm 45. And then what's crazier is that at his funeral, I didn't cry. And I didn't cry because by that time, the whole big boys don't cry thing had been beat into me, where I didn't even have access to those tears. I was numb. I was suppressed and repressed. And this is really huge because of something that happens much later on, where to sort of give you the cliff notes, I walked away from that so scared that I ended up going to a different part of the state. I went to Pennsylvania to an all-white high school. And I had this moment at that high school where I was in the back of this kid, Brad's BMW, and they're listening to Outkast, Tupac, and Biggie. But at the time, it was Outkast, and it was a song called The Wheels of Steel. And I can hear it playing even now. And I'm in the back seat of this kid's BMW. They all have 40s, and they're smoking weed. I don't smoke weed anymore, but I'm looking at this scenario, and I'm like, this is odd, because the kids at my other school, the one that's where the gang activity and the danger and all that stuff, they're doing the same exact thing that these super rich kids are doing. But these kids are going to Yale, and these kids are going to jail. And that correlation for me, again, at 15 and a half, I was like, whoa, like it was like I peered through the veil for a moment. And I instantly knew that life was a game and that no one was coming to save me. And so I began to gamify and figure out how to win in life. And this was like another step in me reclaiming my power because of all the social and historical programming and conditioning for boys, for Black boys, for boys in America, like Christian boys, like all the layers of who I thought I was supposed to be. That was a part of me cutting those cords and then reclaiming who I was in that process.
Really powerful. Preston, thank you for sharing that. I mean, myself listening to it, I'm sure the listener listening right now as well is going, wow. I mean, you grew up in LA amongst some big challenges, potential, fatality at a young age. You went with your gut instinct. You realized that it actually existed and that you should listen. You had a dad who, for whatever reason, was going to support you either way. It's going to support you to go, hey, if you want to be the weed smoker and do that, cool. Well, I'm your dad still. However, you're a leader. And he kind of sowed that seed to say that you've got more in you. Then he started to, I guess, help shape your identity. You mentioned the word identity at the start. And I want to talk about that because does our identity, who we see ourselves as in the world, how we see ourselves in a relationship, how we see ourselves with money, does that identity shape our existence and our reality and what we attract?
Absolutely, it does. It's some of the most important work we can do, because again, what most people think is who they are is not actually who they are, but rather who they became. And so in my work, I teach that you can't intervene in a world you can't actually see. And so, said differently, you can't disown that which you've never owned. And so some of the biggest work for all of us is to go, oh, I grew up like this, and all of these of courses, right? Of course you open the door for a woman. Of course you pay. Of course big boys don't cry. Of course this is how a man and a woman should be. Of course this is how you drive. All of these of courses that live in our bodies, most of them aren't ours. They are passed down. They are inherited. We now know in biology and science that you can inherit something 3 generations back. And so some of the biggest work is remembering who and what we really are. And in my opinion, we are unique emanations of the Most High. Call that God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Allah, call it Source, call it whatever you want to call it. But I believe that each of us is unique, divine snowflakes, isness dancing, God re-experiencing itself through us and through our lens. And so my job, even before we started this, you said, is there anything that can make this better? And I said, my job is to serve, right? God writes the checks, in my opinion. And so even in my new book, Spiritual Millionaire, it's less about how to get more money and more about how to re-identify with the truth of your being, where you become a lighthouse, a beacon, a vessel for something bigger and greater than yourself. And so therefore you bring your own weather. Most people are at the whims of their own weather. I've been coaching and supporting top leaders and multi-millionaires. I have friends with private jets I hang with all the time. I'm usually the richest person in the room, even though they have way more money than me. And it's because I've been working on these principles for so long. I was rich before I was ever rich, right? When I had the beat up Prius and I was, basically living out of it and teaching surf lessons in LA, I was rich then and I'm rich now. When I got the G-Wagon and the houses and all the other stuff, because none of that stuff is my God. And again, when we get that the fruit doesn't belong to the tree, that the fruit belongs to the ecosystem, then my main job is to take care of my soil so that my tree can produce the fruit, and then I give it away. Right? I create value in the world. Yeah.
I resonate with that. And what's interesting, Preston, is an example, so I can think of you as you're explaining who you work with and who you coach. I have a friend who is an executive chairman of an incredibly successful international commercial real estate company. And people see him quite buttoned up. They see him with his, beautiful suit and, his nice glasses and his nice car. And he's got, he's very straight laced. But actually, when him and I sit and have conversations, he has been talking about abundance for longer than I've been alive. He went to the original Brian Tracy events, all the different events you can think of with the people that helped bring the secret to the world. He knows that work. He lives that work, and he's imparting that with the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds of the world now. Yes. So it's interesting because I feel a lot of people in the corporate world, and some of our listeners are in that world. Sometimes this idea of it's all there for the taking in abundance, it can be like they put a brick wall up, like, oh, woo, come on, you got to work harder and more hours to make the money.
Yes.
So they sometimes have a resistance. So let's talk to them for a second. This soil that we want to around us, that if we nurture it, the tree is healthy, the tree will produce the fruit, which will be the abundance of health, relationships, wealth, whatever it might be. So how do we nurture the soil? What is the soil? What are some of those principles?
Yes, I will go there. But before I do, I want to speak to something. There's a book called Healing the Shame That Binds You. And in that book, he talks about the overachiever and the screw up, the F up, having the same toxic shame, but different strategies to hide in it. The overachiever says, I'll make more money. I'll get shinier cars. I'll get a bigger house so that you don't see how much I hate myself. The screw up says, I'll just mess it all up so that you see how much I hate myself and I don't have to be on the hook for anything. I say all that to say, when I work with my clients, I explain to them that there's only two games ever happening: the outside in game and the inside out game. The outside in game, no matter what level you're playing it at, says that if my bank account looks like this, if my employees think about me like this, if my daughter, wife, best friend talks about me in this way, if I get this many likes and comments on my social media, if all outer, if my house is big, then I'm happy. Well, to me, that's a sophisticated addict. You know, I worked with this guy who had $100 million, and I said that exact same thing to him on our discovery call. I said, "Oh, you're an addict," and he was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, you're an addict. You're constantly chasing the next carrot. It's bigger carrots, right? You got faster cars and all that stuff, but you're still scared and small on the inside." And I said it from the most loving way, but it was true. And he said, "You're hired," and I said, "Fantastic," because, you know, I'm not going to use the language I used there, but I'm like, your stuff isn't bigger than mine, and I think you're beautiful. Right? It's not either or. It's not a win-lose. It's a win-win here. That's what we're supposed to do with each other. So some of the principles you asked me for understanding the abundance game. I don't think we can find a multi-millionaire, somebody, and not just money, right? Because abundance is not a number in your bank account. It's something you tune into. Right? It's something you bring. It's something you experience. It's a state of being and consciousness that you bring to the table. Again, an unhappy journey will never produce a happy ending. Happy endings are a byproduct, a side effect from living truly from an attitude of gratitude, not writing it down and doing these rote routine things to say you check them off, but literally being moved by the sun, by the wind, by the laugh of your child. Right? I drop my kids off every day, and I play a game called Nana Na Boo Boo with my kids and all the other kids. And I chase them all around. And that time for me, that's sacred time that I get to chase these little kids around and play tag and tickle them and chase them. Like, I'm winning not because I have more stuff, but because I understand that all of this can be taken away at any given moment. Now I'm going to flash back to 2008 when the stock market crashed and all the real estate went away. People jumped out of their offices and committed suicide because they were playing the outside in game. All of their value and wealth was in the stuff outside. And so again, to me, a lot of people think and they found this out during COVID, that what they called job security was not actually secure, right? All of this stuff can be taken away. The question is, what do you have when it's there and when it's not there, right? What's the stuff that you can sink your teeth into? And what I've come to understand is a lot of life is about range and capacity. And I say in the beginning of our workshops, my wife and I run a workshop called the Bridge Experience. We do all over the world. First one we ever did was in New Zealand, by the way.
Really?
In Auckland. Yep.
Oh, that's epic.
7 people showed up. 7. Right. This is the early beginnings.
If you come back again, I guarantee there's going to be a hell of a lot more than 7.
Yeah. We were just in Australia and it was like 200. Right. It's so interesting and beautiful. But we say at the beginning of our workshop that your job in this workshop is to build a somatic body that can hold everything you say you want and then some. And a somatic body means you actually have the capacity. One of the laws in this book is the law of a yes. I believe that the universe, God, Buddha, whatever you want to call it, the quantum field is always saying yes. And like electricity never says no. Electricity says one thing, and that is, do you have the infrastructure for what you are plugging up? If you have the infrastructure for that iPhone, game on. You have the infrastructure for that Tesla, game on. You have the infrastructure for that city, game on. The body, the somatic body for what you are calling in. A lot of people manifest stuff and you can get the shiny stuff, but can you feel it? Do you have the spaciousness to hold it, to be with it, to use it, to circulate it? What is your relationship? I know people who are just as rich as me or richer who aren't rich in spirit because they operate from scarcity. They're so afraid of losing it all that they're constantly running and chasing. That's not rich. That doesn't feel good at all, and it's not sustainable. So my work is nervous system work, somatic body work. You have the range, the capacity to be in tears one moment over, a moment with your wife or partner, and then to be a monster in the boardroom in the most beautiful way. Right? Because it's not either or. Most people think, if I go this route, then I'll become a hippie and I'll just be crying all the time. No, there's so much space in between. Right? And I'm living proof of that. And I work with so many people who get it. You can be both. You can be all of the above because that's who we are and what we come from.
I have to agree with that. And it's interesting. I think sometimes we're expected to be the same person with the same energy in every setting that we're in. And actually, that's just not how it works. It's like there's different settings, scenarios, and we have to be able to adapt. And I love the fact that you go straight to this tangible understanding of the nervous system. We can all get that. We all understand that we have a nervous system. Mm-hmm. And so the word abundance, when you go, okay, I'm going to park that for a second, and we're going to talk about somatics and nervous system. Great. So how do we elevate from a somatic standpoint? How do we go about doing that?
Yes. Okay. So this is really big and beautiful. And this is literally the work that I do. I have a thing called Spiritual Millionaire Academy, which is online. I have the Bridge Experience, which is in person. I've been doing this for 10 years straight. So all of us come into the world semi-blank slates, right? We have stuff in our DNA from our mom, her mom, and her mom, our dad, his dad, and his dad. And we're born into beliefs and interpretations. And those beliefs and interpretations shape and how we see and view the world. Also, how our mom and dad's relationship with money, with the opposite sex, all of these things play a part in how our psyche and our nervous system is being formed. We don't get full capacity of prefrontal cortex, the front of our brain, until about 12 years old. So prior to that, we're operating mainly out of the reptilian brain, and which is the animal part of us, the fight, flight, freeze, and appease part of us, the part of us that doesn't have as much executive function, right? So anything that occurs, and I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a term in trauma work and in somatic work, a quote that says, the body remembers what the mind forgets. Right? Now just park that for a moment. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Now I'm going to give you an example of what that would look like, because we've worked with people who've had this. Early on, parents used to employ this method called cry it out. And the cry it out method, which I've done, I did it with our first kid. I have 4 children. I did it with our first kid. And I won't say I regret it, but we've had to, combat some of this. The cry it out method essentially states, let's say you're crying in your crib and you want your mom. You want your dad. And you're 3, you're 2, you're 7 months. So you're egocentric, meaning if something bad happens, you think it's your fault. Now you're crying and crying and crying, saying, mommy, come get me, mommy, come get me. And they don't come. The effects of that, because people will come into my workshops and they'll say, I'm so anxious all the time. Anytime I get the love that I want, I just want to hold it. Anytime I manifest something, I feel like I just have to figure out how to not lose it. And they have all this stuff coursing through their bodies. And what they don't understand is that that cry it out method left an imprint in their nervous system. And because there's so many bits of information occurring at any given moment, we delete, we distort, and we generalize. So there's all this stuff going on, and our supercomputer called our body, which is a form of intelligence, is scanning all the time, deleting, distorting, and generalizing. And so anytime it picks up on something that resembles something that hurt us, it will push it away, sabotage it, or ring the alarm, the amygdala, and we will go into these altered states: fight, flight, freeze, and appease, new one, or fawn, and we will figure out how to survive with these things. Now, the problem with this is when we're in the survival brain, we are not in the executive function. We are not in the creative brain. We are not in the beauty of the world brain. We're in the run from a saber-toothed tiger brain. Now, no problem if that happens once a month or even once every 3 months. But most humans, it's happening 30 times a day. And they're not allowing it to complete. The cycle must complete. Okay, I know I'm jumping around, but I'm going to make this all make sense. We're now in the caves. You and I are cavemen. And we walk out of that cave, and all of a sudden we hear a rustling in the bush, and a saber-toothed tiger jumps out. Boom. The amygdala fires off. The body goes into fight, flight, freeze, and appease. We figure out whatever we need to do to stay safe. Okay, the saber-toothed tiger is gone. Saber-toothed tiger is gone. Somebody else got killed. Well, you and I would need to give our body the signal. Okay, it's okay now. We're safe. We can return back to executive functioning. We can be a regular human again. We can love people again. But instead, what modern day humans do is they have 30 of those happening a day. And then they watch stuff on social media. And then they have this new term called shared fate, where you watch somebody die, or you watch somebody trip, or you watch somebody go through something, and your mirror neurons fire off, and you now feel what they felt. It's all connected. Well, okay, 30 times a day, what would that equal? Well, if you look at the statistics of what happens, I think it's like 80% of doctor visits are psychosomatic, meaning they have no freaking clue what's actually happening. Well, as somebody in the trauma and nervous system space, I know exactly what's happening. It's the body ringing the bell saying, bro, you did not process what happened to you at 7, nor did you process what happened to you at 14, nor did you process that moment where you came too quick when you were having marital relations with that girl, and then you felt shame, and then you went into your shame spiral, but you suppressed it. So we're suppressing. And this the last piece I'll say. If you try to push a beach ball underwater, where's it going to go? It's going to slide out. Yep, it's going to slide out in places that maybe you didn't want it to slide out. And so what we're seeing across the board, and this is why so many people, but men especially, come to me after, 7 years later, like, yo, that was the most life-changing thing I've ever done in my life. It's because we're going directly to the scariest, ugliest, deepest, most shameful parts of these humans, and helping them process it and move it out of their body. Because talk therapy is not enough. That's just talk. That's head. That's intellect. The body has caught all this stuff, and it needs a release, a release, a release. That's nervous system work.
That's massive. It's interesting, as you were sharing that, a few things came to mind. The body keeps the score. Obviously incredible body of work by Bessel and Maston Kip, probably more recently. I've been learning a little through Maston's work around nervous system. So I really resonate with what you're saying around like what we need to do in the work and how we approach it. For the person that's listening right now that's going, whoa, where's the clinical psychologist in your work? Where's the, they want to know all that stuff.
Yes.
What message do you have for them to say, hey, this is safe and you're safe with us?
Yeah. You can find everything. We've had doctors, clinical psychologists, everybody come to our workshops and go, literally, this is textbook, bro. How did you guys figure this out?
Awesome.
And we literally have, including Maston. Maston is a good friend of mine. We all
Ah,
know each
cool.
other. Everybody in the trauma space, we text, we talk to each other. You can look at any of our work and go, oh, I found that, I saw that in that book, or I read that here, or I learned that in this college course. It's all, we just weaved it together. So for me, I'm self-taught, self-led. This is just something I care about. And I care about it, James, because I almost died. What I didn't tell you about in my story is at 25 years old, I had a heart condition come up. I found myself in a cardiologist's office, and that moment sitting there with these 75-year-olds and these 60-year-olds, and I'm 25. And this cardiologist basically saying, hey, you got two choices. You can take pills for the rest of your life and regulate your heartbeat, or you can look at your stress and your diet. And I went cold turkey in that moment. I went straight vegan. I went down the rabbit hole, and I healed myself by addressing all the wounds and trauma and all the places where I didn't cry, where I didn't feel. There's nothing, literally nothing in our work that you cannot find in the top clinical psychologists, like neuroscience, all of this, all of the above. It's literally all there. And you got to do it how you want to do it. A lot of times, and I'll say this very lightly, a lot of times people in some of those spaces can unconsciously do more harm than good, because it's the idea, if all you have is a hammer, then you're just constantly looking for nails. And so if all I work through or work with is, let's call it attachment theory, then every single person that comes to me has to be in attachment theory, right? If all I work with is IFS and parts work, then everybody I talk to has to be parts work, right? If all I work through and work with is trauma work, then I have to put everything through the lens of trauma. Well, I'm the type of person where I went into all of those spaces, extracted the best parts, I worked it out before I even got there. So I did it for me first, and then I went and got certified and went into all these different places to learn the NLPs and the this, that, and the others, and do somatic work where I go, oh, here's the missing link. Hear this loud and clear. The body is the missing link. You could do mindset work till the cows come home. But if you do not have a safe, regulated nervous system, none of it matters. It's just
I
hot there.
100% agree. Like,
Yeah.
we've got to agree on that. And Dr. Nicole LaPera, her work as well has really informed me on that, and understanding, like, hey, you've got to regulate that body of yours. And,
Mm-hmm.
growing up in Northern Ireland, I witnessed some interesting things unfold with violence and, just a different culture, quite a lot of division. And in my 30s, started to come up with some health conditions that
Yeah.
doctors couldn't figure out.
That.
And actually understanding to regulate my body, I ended up flying to LA to try and kind of remedy things. And working on myself
Mm-hmm.
was the big differentiator. Taking the meds from the doctors actually didn't make any difference at all for me. Some it may, but for me, taking a med to try and get rid of a lump or whatever it was, like, it just didn't work. So
Yep.
I really resonate with what you're saying, that we've got to regulate our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
stop with the mindset books until
Yes.
we've got our nervous systems ready for that stuff.
Correct. I'm going to give your listeners a tool that I learned, and this is controversial, but I learned it in this place. And then I've given it to thousands of people, and thousands of people all say the same thing. That's ridiculously awesome. So I did a mushroom ceremony in Joshua Tree, California. This is a long time ago. And in that mushroom ceremony, I had a moment where I literally was tapping into levels of joy that I didn't know were possible. And everywhere I looked, I just saw God and beauty. And I had this moment while I was on the mushrooms where I was like, why can't I do this in my regular life? And I made note of it. Well, mushrooms are over. I drive back to LA, and I woke up that morning and I said, all right, here it is. I'm going to set 3 to 5 alarms in my phone. Every time the alarm goes off, I'm calling these joy alarms. I'm going to tap into reasonless joy and see the face of God everywhere I go. And so I'd just be going about my day and the alarm would go off and I'd be like, ah! And I'd tap into this joy, just like your face, right? Where exchange,
I
I would
love
be
it.
so lit up and then right back. And I just go back to what I was doing. Well, what happens from a science perspective is I'm building I'm titrating and putting myself, raising the bar on the baseline from which I live. So when I work with clients, sometimes I'll say, okay, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being completely depressed and you hate life, 10 being absolute pleasure and joy all the time. Where do you live on a 30-day basis? So every month, what's the average? Most of my clients will say, I'm in a 4 to 6, sometimes 7 range. Fantastic. Okay. I measure it, write it down. Then I put them on this assignment. 30 days later, where do you live? Oh, like an 8, 9, right? They're raising their vibration literally. And the key to the joy alarms is you must make sound and open your body. So you can't just like
I
do it
love
like a
it.
mouse, right? You got to burst into joy. And I had a corporate client, big time CEO guy out of North Carolina recently who was struggling with some anxiety stuff. And I had him do this. And he set 4 alarms because he had 4 children. And the alarm was for each child. And he would just, the moment it go off, he'd think about that child and he'd burst into joy and he'd allow himself to be hit by a wave of gratitude. And then he'd go about his day. Well,
That's beautiful.
90 days later, anxiety completely gone, just gone. So
That's amazing. And it's so interesting because I know there will be a listener listening right now going, oh my goodness, that's cringy. Oh, I'm resisting that. I don't want to do
yes,
that. Like, what if I'm in
yes,
public or at work and I have to be like really excited? There's all these excuses, right? But
yes,
then the growth is like right where we're uncomfortable. And that discomfort that people might be feeling in you setting them that challenge is
yes.
exactly why they should give it a go.
What imprisons us, what imprisons you, also points to your freedom. So the very thing
Mhm.
that you're afraid of is the door to your freedom, right? I've had clients do that. I had a client, really rich real estate guy out of Australia. And he was like, we were talking on one of our sessions, and he was like, oh, yeah, I didn't do it today because I was with my uncle all day. I was like, why didn't you do it? He's like, oh, because I was with my uncle all day. And I was like, but why didn't you do it? And he's like, well, like, I didn't want to like look stupid. And I'm like, so where'd you get the idea that that would look stupid? And we just kept peeling it back. And it's some like archaic convict thing that the Aussie battlers operate from because of tall poppy syndrome, right? So now I'm saying, okay, do you want to perpetuate tall poppy? You want to withhold your joy from your uncle? Well, he went back and he was like, all right, game on. I'm going to do it in front of him just to open the door of the freedom of actually being himself. Again, most people who most people think they are is not who they are. And oftentimes you don't know it until you get in the presence of somebody who's so full and so in their beast mode, right? People come and they're like, how are you a multi-millionaire, but you're also like skateboard and do, surf and like go to Burning Man and like you're this crazy dad and you're like nature dude, but then you run businesses and you have employees, and it's because I have range, homie. I'm working on me. I suggest you do the same. I don't think I'm better than anybody. I think I'm more practiced. I just practice more.
It's
And
so refreshing to hear.
yeah.
It really is, Preston. Like, I love it. And the people that I look up to the most and that are the most successful financially, relationally,
Mm,
socially, professionally, I look at them and I'm like, oh, the more I get to know them, they are surfing. They are
mhm.
trying ayahuasca,
Yeah, yeah,
psilocybin. They are
yeah.
reading the books. They're going to therapy. They're trying modalities. And people only get to see the buttoned up version of them and are like, no way they would do that stuff. But the
Mhm.
more and more people, film stars,
Yep.
producers, top CEOs that I work with, like they're doing the things that you do. And they're coming to
Mhm.
people like you and Maston because you are global leaders. And what I must say, I've watched you do this brilliantly. You can sit nose to nose with a world leading psychologist,
Mhm.
psychotherapist, psychiatrist, and hold your own and even challenge them to the point where they're like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're right. I didn't realize that. I didn't see it from that. That's what gives me faith and hope that, hey, we don't need to go the traditional route for everything. And in
Correct.
fact, often we need to look for what's different. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate the work you do. And right now, actually, the listener, please get into the show notes and go
Mm-hmm.
and buy Spiritual Millionaire. It's in the show notes right now. If you want to follow Preston and the hundreds of thousands of others that do, please go do that. You will be challenged. You will be inspired. You will be
Yeah.
pushed outside your comfort zone. I promise you. I love it.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's
Preston, can I
been,
ask you one last question?
yeah, absolutely.
So, if you and I were to fast forward many
Mm-hmm.
years into the future,
Mm-hmm.
you were highly aware that it's your very last day here on earth,
Mm-hmm.
and someone very young that you love comes into the room and says, hey, Preston, I've got a question. How do I go about leading my life on
Mm-hmm.
purpose? What would you say to them?
Mm-hmm. Um, I would remind them that they can't miss. It's one of the things that I have written in Spiritual Millionaire, but one of the laws and principles that I operate from is there's no place where God isn't. There's no border, there's no mistake, there's no up, there's no down, there's no left, there's no right. It's omnipresent. You can't miss. Anywhere you go, you can create prison or paradise. It could be a tombstone or a stepping stone. The choice is in the moment. And if if this conversation was with my children, and I do not just say these things, but I demonstrate them, there's no mistakes. Just growing, learning, and gifting ourselves with the spaciousness of saying yes to something. So I would tell that person, be a full yes to whatever your yes is, because you don't know enough to know what's being set up for you. Right? Oftentimes, and I'll give you this, I guess this is an analogy or metaphor that I've used many times. If I'm flying from California to New York, right, coast to coast, my intention is to get to New York. But if on that flight, the pilot comes over and he says, "Look, we got some turbulence. We're going to have to stop off in North Dakota." Right? To the untrained eye and to the ego, I go, North Dakota, this is stupid. I messed up. Something went wrong. This is a mistake. But if in North Dakota I meet someone that I end up dating or partnering with, who then connects me to another person that then connects me to this thing that I've always wanted to do, where I wanted to be a DJ, and then I start DJing, and then I get back on the plane, and then all of a sudden I'm in New York, and what I'm in New York for has shifted, but because I picked up the thing in North Dakota, I am actually ready for New York. That to me is what's always happening. We just view things from a limited perspective. And so to take the 50,000 foot view on life would be my advice. You can't miss. Anywhere you go, all roads lead to the same place, which is here and now.
Such powerful advice. Preston, I needed to hear that today. And there'll be other listeners that needed to hear that today. So I want to thank you deeply for your work. I'm going to continue to follow you and share your work. And
Thanks,
no
man.
doubt there'll be more books and more impact and influence in the world. So please keep at it.
Deeply appreciate it, James. It's been awesome and fun, and definitely going to hit you up next time I'm on that side of the world, because I love it. I've been, the word mana is one of my favorite words, and it's to me, it's the spirit I want to embody in the world. And so I'll definitely hit you up when I'm in New Zealand, and appreciate every single person listening from wherever you are. Just know that you are perfect, whole, and complete, but not finished. You are appreciated. If nobody's told you today, I'm proud of you. It's not easy being a human in this world right now. And no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you keep getting back up. And I know that because you're listening to a podcast like this. My truth is that birds of a feather always flock together. And so if you see beauty and magic in James and I, that's the same beauty and magic that exists within you, because there are no throwaway humans on this planet. And no matter what your title is or isn't, you are worthy and you deserve to be here.
Powerful. Preston, thank you so much. The Lead on Purpose podcast is sponsored by NZ Mortgages. Learn more at nzmortgages.co.nz.